Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, your heart racing, your mind spiraling, and your soul burdened with fear of what tomorrow may bring? Worry is something we've all experienced. It creeps into our lives quietly but settles like a storm that refuses to pass. But let me ask you today, why do you worry? What does worry truly give you? Does it solve problems? Does it add value to your life? Or does it only drain your peace, blur your vision, and paralyze your faith? Worry is one of the most exhausting emotions we can experience, yet it produces no real fruit in our lives. Unlike planning, preparing, or taking responsibility, worry is entirely unproductive. It gives the illusion of action, but in reality, it only traps the mind in a cycle of helplessness. When we worry, we expend emotional energy without gaining any progress or clarity. It's like sitting in a rocking chair. There's a lot of movement, but you're not going anywhere. The hours we spend worrying could be spent on problem solving, priya, or peace building activities that truly bring change. But worry robs us of that possibility by keeping us frozen in fear. Furthermore, worry creates a burden that affects not only our thoughts, but our physical bodies as well. Furthermore, worry consumed by hypothetical scenarios that may never happen, leaving us tired, frustrated, and imaginable pressure. It varies. Anxiety tissues. De idiopatinosi. Ke busprensi. Ke buspres. This physical cost is rarely worth the mental obsession we give to problems that haven't even manifested yet. Worry may disguise itself as care or concern, but its long-term effects are damaging rather than constructive. Emotionally, worry blocks us from experiencing joy, gratitude, and peace, the very things that make life meaningful. In relationships, it makes us clingy or distant, fearful of rejection or failure, and incapable of enjoying the moment. Ultimately, it disrupts our ability to love fully, live freely, and think clearly. Even from a spiritual standpoint, worry contradicts the foundation of trust and faith. Many faith traditions teach that we are not alone, that there is a higher power guiding and caring for us. Worry, however, is the expression of believing that everything depends on us. It suggests that we must control every outcome, fix every detail, and protect ourselves from all harm. This mindset leaves no room for trust, for surrender, or for peace. Instead of lifting our concerns in prayer or seeking wisdom through reflection, we rehearse our fears and magnify our problems. In doing so, we trade the calm assurance of faith for the endless unrest of anxiety. One of the most damaging effects of worry is that it pulls you out of the present moment where your life is actually happening. When you're caught up in fear about the future or regret over the past, you are mentally absent from what's happening right now. You may be physically present, but emotionally and spiritually you are distant, disconnected from the people around you and unable to fully engage with what the day has to offer. The present moment is where joy, peace, opportunity, and even divine encounters reside. But worry hijacks your attention and shifts your focus to problems that are not yet real or situations that are beyond your reach. This constant mental projection into the future drains your awareness and divides your focus. You can be having dinner with your family, sitting in a classroom or walking through a park and still feel numb or anxious because your mind is trapped in tomorrow's fears. The irony is that the very life you're trying to protect by worrying is the same life you're missing out on. Every second spent worrying is a second stolen from being alive to the beauty, the relationships, the opportunities, and the peace that exist in the now. Worry doesn't just rob your future, it robs your present. Moreover, when you're distracted from the present, your ability to make sound decisions becomes impaired. You're more likely to act from panic than from purpose, to speak from stress rather than wisdom. Worry narrows your vision so you can't see the resources and support available right in front of you. It makes problems appear larger than they are and solutions smaller than they actually may be. By pulling your attention away from what you can do today, worry causes you to overlook the steps that could actually lead you forward. Instead of focusing on your next right step, you become stuck in cycles of what if that lead nowhere. Spiritually and emotionally, being rooted in the present is essential for growth and connection. It's in the present that you can hear the still, small voice of peace. It's in the present that gratitude can bloom. When you are mindful and grounded in the current moment, you begin to experience life more deeply. You notice the smile of a loved one, the warmth of the sun, the calm in your breath. But worry chokes these moments. It interrupts the sacred rhythm of daily life with noise and fear. Learning to stay present is not just a mindfulness technique. It's a spiritual discipline that counteracts the mental chaos that worry creates. At its core, worry is not based on facts, it's based on fear. It builds its case not on certainty, but on possibilities, and often the worst case ones. We begin to imagine scenarios that have not happened and may never happen, yet they feel as real as the chair we're sitting on. This is because worry feeds on emotional exaggeration. It takes a small concern and grows it into a looming catastrophe. Instead of looking at reality, in this distorted view becomes the lens through which we interpret Those sang ahead in the vision. The lens distort. They initiate. Fear by nature is reactive. It doesn't ask for evidence. It only demands attention. When fear enters, logic often exits. We begin to act not from wisdom, but from worry-cued panic. Our thoughts race, our heartbeat quickens, and our mind jumps from one frightening possibility to the next. This fear-based mindset convinces us that the worst is always around the corner, and because we begin to expect disaster, we brace ourselves constantly, never able to relax, to trust, or to find peace. It's important to recognize that just because a thought enters your mind does not mean it's the truth. Many of our worries are rooted in speculation, not evidence. In contrast, truth is grounding. Truth calms. When you face life based on truth rather than fear, you begin to distinguish between what is possible and what is probable, between what is imagined and what is real. This shift in thinking empowers you to respond rather than react. Truth helps you recognize your own strength, the resources you have, and the fact that many of your past worries never even came to pass. Now, truth reminds you that while you may not control every detail of life, you are not helpless and you are certainly not alone. But to find that truth, you must be willing to challenge your fears, question your assumptions, and ground yourself in reality. Worry does not want you to ask questions. It only wants you to panic. But spiritual and emotional maturity come when you begin to question your fears. Is this worry based on something real, or is it an exaggeration? Has this fear come true before? What would happen if I faced this with faith instead of fear? These are the kinds of questions that disarm worry and lead you back to peace. When you start to recognize that worry is often a lie disguised as concern, you gain the power to step back and reclaim your peace. The truth may not always remove your challenges, but it will give you clarity, courage, and calm to face them. The majority of our worries stem not from present realities, but from imagined futures. Our minds are incredibly powerful storytellers, and they can craft elaborate narratives about what could go wrong. These hypothetical scenarios often begin with a small concern, a late response, a change in plans, a bad day, and spiral into worst-case assumption. We start to believe that one mistake will lead to complete failure, that one sickness will become a life-altering disease, or that one argument will destroy a relationship. These stories play on repeat in our minds, gaining strength with each repetition until they feel just as real as facts. But they are not reality, they are merely possibilities, and more often than not, they never come to pass. This tendency to focus on imaginary outcomes is rooted in our desire for control and certainty. The mind seeks to predict and protect against pain by preparing for the worst. But in doing so, it robs us of peace and clarity. Instead of seeing what is, we become consumed with what might be. This kind of overthinking leads to emotional exhaustion, stress, and a constant sense of dread. We brace ourselves for impact from threats that may never arrive. What's even more harmful is that we begin to treat these imagined outcomes as truths, adjusting our behavior, our emotions, and our decisions around a fear that hasn't even been validated. Imaginary outcomes also limit our ability to see hope, opportunity, and faith. When our thoughts are clouded with negative what ifs, we miss the positive possibilities. We don't consider what could go right, what might turn out better than expected, or what strength we might find in the challenge. We become biased toward disaster, training our minds to expect failure, betrayal, or pain. This distorted thinking reduces our ability to dream, to plan with purpose, or to believe in transformation. We settle for small lives, not because we're incapable of more, but because we've allowed fear-based imaginations to shrink our view of what's possible. To overcome this habit, we must learn to challenge our thoughts and separate fact from fiction. Just because something is possible, just begin to tell you something by grounding ourselves in the present moment instead of creating disaster, by beginning to feel in Kriyati Multiha. The future is unknown, yes, but it is not guaranteed to be dark. There is just as much possibility for joy as there is for hardship, and by focusing only on the negative, we close our eyes to the light that could be just ahead. Worry is not just a mental distraction, it is a spiritual disruption. Each time we allow worry to dominate our thoughts, we strengthen doubt and weaken our trust in what is greater than us. Faith, whether it's in God, in life, or in ourselves, requires confidence in the unseen and a surrender to the unknown. Worry, on the other hand, insists on control, certainty, and immediate answers. When worry takes root, it chips away at the very foundation of faith. We begin to question whether things will work out, whether we are capable, and whether we are truly supported. Over time, doubt grows stronger and faith becomes an afterthought. Buried under anxiety and fear, this erosion of faith impacts every area of our lives. It shapes our attitude toward challenges, causing us to panic rather than persevere. It influences our relationships, making us suspicious rather than trusting. It affects our ability to rest, to pray, to reflect, or to believe in healing and restoration. Faith says, "It may not be easy, but I am not alone." While worry says, "I am on my own and everything is falling apart." When you live in a mindset of worry, you begin to expect disappointment. You stop hoping, you stop dreaming, and you start preparing for disaster, even when there is no evidence of it on the horizon. Worry is like a constant whisper that says, "What if things go wrong?" while faith responds, "But what if they go right?" It's not that faith denies the existence of problems. It simply believes in a greater power, purpose, or plan behind them. But when worry dominates our thoughts, we stop hearing the voice of peace and instead become tuned into fear. This is why nurturing faith is crucial. Not only does it strengthen our inner resilience, but it also gives us an anchor in times of uncertainty. Faith does not promise a trouble-free life, but it does provide a calm confidence in the face of chaos. A confidence that worry can never offer. To rebuild faith and weaken the grip of worry, We must intentionally choose trust over fear, especially in uncertain moments. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice of surrendering what we cannot control and reminding ourselves of the truth we believe in. Whether that truth is rooted in scripture, in lived experience, or in spiritual reflection, it must be stronger than the fear we face. Faith must be fed, or worry will grow. When you take your focus off the storm and place it on the one who calms the storm, you begin to reclaim your peace. Worry may still knock on the door, but it no longer has the power to move in and take over. There is a unique kind of freedom that comes when we shift from worrying to trusting. Trust in God provides a resting place for the soul. Gridial, poison, lightning, crowning still make a subtle change of fashion answer to their thing. Many times we think it's responsible to worry. We believe that if we are not constantly thinking about our problems, they'll get worse. But worry is not the same as responsibility. Worry is often a form of control. It's the mind's attempt to hold tightly to every detail, outcome, and scenario. Trust, on the other hand, is a release. It's an active decision to say, God, I may not know what's coming, but I trust that you do. This kind of surrender is not weakness. It is strength. It requires humility to admit that you cannot handle it all on your own. And it requires courage to believe that someone else can. Trusting God transforms our inner atmosphere. When we truly believe that God is good, present, and powerful, our hearts can rest even when our circumstances remain uncertain. We begin to pray differently, think differently, and live differently. The panic softens, the fear quiets. The need to predict every outcome fades. Even in the face of difficulty, we find ourselves anchored, not because we have all the answers, but because we are held by the one who does. Trust allows us to shift from survival mode into faith mode, where hope becomes a lens and peace becomes a companion. Learning to trust God is a journey, not a one-time decision. It requires daily reminders, honest conversations in prayer, and a willingness to release what weighs us down. As we practice trusting, we begin to experience the truth that we were never meant to carry our burdens alone. The more we trust, the less we worry. Not because life gets easier, but because our confidence grows stronger. We realize that God's hands are more capable than our minds, and His timing is wiser than our plans. The act of trust becomes a bridge between chaos and calm. between fear and faith, and between exhaustion and rest. One of the greatest misconceptions we carry is that peace will come when we finally gain control over every aspect of our lives. We believe that if we can just fix the problem, secure the future, manage the outcome, or avoid all risks, then we'll be at peace. But true peace doesn't live in the land of control. It lives in the place of surrender. Control is an illusion. Life is unpredictable. People are imperfect, and outcomes are never guaranteed. The more we chase control, the more frustrated and anxious we become. Surrender, however, is the sacred release of that chase. It is choosing to rest in the assurance that we are not meant to hold it all together. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means letting go of the need to know every answer, to solve every problem, and to carry every burden. It's acknowledging that some things are beyond your reach and trusting that they are not beyond God's. When you surrender control, you begin to live with open hands rather than clenched fists. You stop gripping so tightly to expectations and allow space for grace, for unexpected blessings, and for peace to enter. Surrender turns your heart from frantic striving to quiet trust, from panic to presence. It is the posture of freedom and the pathway to inner calm. Peace that comes through surrender is not temporary, it is lasting, because it's rooted in something deeper than circumstances. It's not about everything going right, it's about knowing you are still grounded even when things go wrong. You stop letting the noise of life determine your inner state. You begin to respond rather than react, to breathe rather than rush, to trust rather than fear. This kind of peace transcends logic. It's the peace that surpasses understanding, a calmness that stands firm in the middle of uncertainty. It's the result of trusting in a God who is greater than your chaos. To live a life of peace, we must practice the art of surrender daily. It may mean surrendering our timelines, our fears, our ambitions, or even our image of what life should look like. But in every act of surrender, we create room for divine peace to fill the spaces worry used to occupy. The soul rests not when everything is fixed, but when everything is entrusted. And in that trust, we begin to walk in peace, not because we've mastered life, but because we've finally let go and allowed God to carry what we could not. So today, ask yourself honestly, why do I worry? Is it helping me grow? Is it making my life richer or my mind calmer? Or is it simply a habit I've held on to for too long? A habit rooted in fear, not in truth. Life is far too precious to be lived in fear of the unknown. There is peace available to you, not when everything is perfect, but when your heart chooses to trust over control, surrender over striving, and faith over fear. Worry will always knock on the door, but you don't have to let it in. You can choose a different path. You can choose to live in the moment, embrace truth, nurture your faith, and walk in peace. You were not created to carry every burden, solve every problem, or foresee every outcome. You were created to trust, to grow, and to live freely in the care of a God who knows your needs before you even speak them. Let go of what you cannot control and let God be God. Your future is not held together by your worry. It's held by His hands. When you surrender the weight of worry, you make room for the power of peace. And in that peace, you will find clarity, strength, and freedom you never knew you were missing. So stop, breathe, trust. The world may be uncertain, but your heart doesn't have to be. Why do you worry when peace is just one surrender away?